Well, good morning. It's kind of odd using this microphone here when there's the size room we've got, but we have our friends from Salina Media Connections. We appreciate the opportunity for you all recording this and having this available for the community in the coming weeks. So I'm Mitch Robinson. I'm Executive Director of the Salina Community Economic Development Organization. We're one of the partners in our Startup Salina effort. Unfortunately, Eric Brown, the Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce, couldn't be with us this morning. He's got an ill child that he has to be with, so we all wish him well. And then I've got Heather Morgan. Heather's with K-State, has been working with us closely on this process of looking at different options that we're going to talk about this morning. But give you a little background. Several of you all have been with us on some of our visits to Manhattan and down to Wichita, and we've been trying to develop and find out what has been successful in developing a entrepreneurial ecosystem. We have pieces of that here in the community. Now we're just trying to do more coordination, bringing that all together. And as a result of our Kansas, let me get my dates right, April 10th Entrepreneurial Summit, we came out with several different projects, and we're going to be talking about those and how we've gone about spending kind of the summer visiting, looking at, comparing, trying to figure out what we want to do now. So today we're kind of calling our next steps meeting, what we're going to be working on, and Heather and I will be talking about what we've got going. So we've really broken it down into three things. The first one I'll talk about is a community meeting, and I'll just steal the term 1 million cups type program. We're calling it a hybrid version of Million Cups. We're going to take parts of Startup Grind, which is a Google effort. We're not going to bring officially at this point until we see a need for that. And then the third piece would be educational component, which is a little different than what 1 million cups does. So what we're looking at is a morning program, coffee starting at 7:30, and then 8 to 9 o'clock for the program. That's what's been successful for 1 million cups. So if it works for Kaufman, I think we can piggyback on what they're doing. So we're thinking the first Monday of the month, which if we go with the projected potential startup date, would be September 5th for our first meeting. So as I said, it's going to be a combination of Million Cups type, Startup Grind, and then this educational component. But what we need, and what we need to reach out to people, and what we've been trying to do on our Facebook page, Startup Salina, and getting the message out, we need volunteers. As I've said in previous meetings, this can't be driven by economic development and the Chamber of Commerce and K-State. It has to be driven by the entrepreneurs within the community. So I know we've got a couple here today, and we're excited about that. But we need to get people to volunteer to take part of this program and to help lead it. So I'm going to be looking for 8 to 10, 8 to 12 volunteers that can help put up the programming, develop the programming, seek funding. So we're going to be seeking sponsors. We're going to look at maybe 4 sponsors. I think I've got a couple already lined up. But basically that would just be covering the rental cost, coffee, water expenses during the meetings, maybe help with some of the equipment needs we might have. So we've been talking with Mary about having it at the Temple, and we think that's a great location for folks. So we're going to look at a monthly program, and then as we move forward, there is some discussion, some thoughts. People ask, well, why did you choose 7:30 in the morning for this meeting? Well, you got to pick a time somewhere to host a meeting, and a lot of people up and are going and ready to roll. Some people obviously are already to their job. So possibly as this thing would grow, we'd look at maybe a quarterly evening event as well. And if we get into it and see that morning's not working for us, maybe we'd be better off with an evening event. So we'll just have have to work through that. But I think that's kind of what we're shooting for at this point. Those sponsors, we're looking at, I think we've got a bank somewhat committed, a law firm somewhat committed, maybe accounting, if anybody has a connection to an accounting firm that might be interested in being a sponsor, IT, people that would basically be interested in supporting the entrepreneurial community. That's who we're looking for. So, and that's kind of the first point of what we're trying to do. Has anybody got any questions, thoughts? A couple of you all, Mary went to Wichita with us. Laura went to Manhattan with us. And so I don't know if anybody else is familiar, if they've been to a Million Cups program in another community. Some of the folks we had at a meeting recently used to live near Lawrence, and they were very active in attending the programs there. We are talking about a monthly program. Wichita has a weekly program. I don't think we could handle a weekly program. It'd be, I think, overwhelming, and we would dilute. But what I'm thinking, again, this is up for discussion and debate, is we've had a lot of successful entrepreneurs here. People have built big businesses. So we would have some of those people come and do maybe a one-on-one discussion with somebody asking questions and then having Q&A with the audience. That could be one type program. The other one would be what they've done with a Million Cups is basically a new business, 3 years, 5 years or less, and then a potential business who somebody is seeking guidance. And what they do, for those who all haven't been, is they spend about 6 minutes. The company is making basically not necessarily a pitch, but discussing what they're doing in their business, what their product is, how they're marketing it, how they're selling it, or how they're wanting to do that. And then the audience asks questions for 15 to 20 minutes, giving them feedback, and it's a nurturing environment. We want people to learn from that. So we've got, come on in. So we've got people that are providing their expertise from the business community, advising this relatively new business or potential startup. So those are, and then the third piece would be some of the programs we're going to talk about potentially, but short segments, 10 to 15 minutes, get a snippet of what's going on, what programs might be coming up, and we're going to talk about some of those later, but just kind of really wet a person's whistle, provide some basic information about something going on at K-State, something the foundation is doing, something that people of the entrepreneurial community would be interested in learning more about. So those are kind of the three things. Maybe we do panel discussions, recent startups. I could see focusing maybe one day, we get some of the new restaurant people, bakery, Seraphin, Robbie and his cheesecake business, get those people sit in on a panel and kind of give advice about, well, this is how we handled it. This is the issues that we're facing as a new business. And then another avenue could be an actual kind of a Shark Tank situation, or a business is wanting to get funding, somebody starting up, and then have a panel of potential investors sitting in. So that's going to take somebody that would be pretty willing to stand up in front of a crowd and talk about their business startup. So that'll be a little bit harder to do, but I think that's an option for us. So anybody have any thoughts, comments? Say no, you're crazy, won't work, please.
So it sounds like you're thinking mostly education, advising people.
That would be a small, the education I think would be a smaller piece. But again, it's going to be driven by entrepreneurs. Maybe.
Are you thinking of any common services that you might offer to any or all?
And
What do you mean, accounting, legal, whatever's outside services.
Mhm.
Startup.
I think that's definitely something we would want to talk about. we're going to have sponsors. Some of those sponsors would be doing what you're talking about. There would be others, but I think a lot of it would be, let me just jump on down to some of the programs we're talking about. Like we've got in August, we've got, I hope everybody picked up these sheets. We've got 2 sessions. The Kansas SBDC out of Fort Hays is sponsoring 2 sessions. Now, these are 90-minute sessions. What I would be envisioning is maybe take it down to a 10 or 15-minute brief overview of what's going to go on that day would be part of it. We've also got SCORE is looking at coming here to setting up programs based on, again, what the community. And one of the things that in my notes a little further down is we're going to do a survey. We want to do a survey. Heather's provided me a survey. I've gotten a couple other surveys. So we're going to be looking at that as, what does the entrepreneurial community, the small business community really need? We always hear about financing needs. That's one. We know that's an issue for some businesses. The other thing we've heard about is mentors. These startup businesses, and we've had an example of that in the community of a offshoot, some graduates from K-State Polytechnic getting into the drone business. And, they are young experts in the drone world, but the business community, the business side of it is something they needed some help with. So those are the sort of things we'd be looking with. But again, we need to get the entrepreneurs to drive the boat. So, and that goes back to the survey of trying to meet their needs. So we'll be, I think before the end of the month, we'll have that out, and we'll be talking about that across the country, or across the city. Not the country, I guess. That might be a little big for us. Anything else? Raju? Kurt? Yeah.
It's just nice to have support. If you're starting a business or you already have an established business, to have other people around you and ask ideas about yourself. And the back office idea of shared services, nonprofits in town just got together about 6 months ago, and we're trying the same thing. And I think it's a great idea if you're a sole proprietor accountant to have a group that might come to you and say, we need that. 10 members, 20 members that might need some services. And see if you can get some
Right. I think one of the things, Laura, when you were with us in Manhattan, talking with the organizers, the big benefit of this is not necessarily the program. Now, to the people making the presentation, that's a benefit to them, but for the people in the audience, it's that coffee time, that interaction of making connections. You guys have been talking your all's activities before that we got started today. We may have people that Laura was making connections with the crowd in Manhattan where she used to live. So that time before the meeting, middle of the meeting, and then afterwards, I think that's the real important part, is making those connections. And we all know relationships really drive business, so that's I think a key piece of it. So if y'all don't have any other questions, we're going to move on. I'm going to let Heather talk about what we're doing on the Fab Lab side.
Yeah, so one of the themes that came out of our meeting back in April was this idea of a community Fab Lab or makerspace, same thing kind of. And so we toured Independence Community College and also Wichita State's Go Create. Those are kind of the ends of the spectrum in terms of differences between the two makerspaces. And so I think that what we want to know from you all is, what are the types of equipment that needs to be in there? Clearly, Wichita State has millions of dollars worth of high-end equipment. Do we need that in Salina? Or are you interested in using a laser engraver or a water jet cutter? What are those pieces of equipment that you can't afford to have at your shop on your own, but if all the entrepreneurial community could use those pieces of equipment, that it's a benefit to everybody? In Independence, they've had students that are coming from probably about 60 miles away, and they're bringing their goods to the equipment, making what they're doing and going back home because they don't have access to that equipment. So if you think about those really high-end pieces of equipment, $25,000, $30,000 pieces of equipment, no one can afford that. So we're really interested in what are the types of equipment that you need to have in there. Where does this place need to be? Does it need to be, what do the hours need to be? One of the things that we've learned through both successful and non-successful places like this across the state, the ecosystem around the equipment. So it's not enough just to have the equipment, because some of it's pretty complicated and we don't want people to get injured using the equipment. But how do we take somebody who's a hobbyist and who's using laser engraving on maybe a Yeti cup? How do we take that into a business? How do you use the tools to create a new business? In Independence, they've been very successful with incubating businesses. They are really getting women involved in using high-tech equipment that they probably would have never used and starting businesses like that. And so the question for you all is, what does this community need? What pieces of equipment should we be going after? There are probably people around town that have pieces of equipment that are very rarely used sitting in their business. In Independence, they were successful with that business locating the piece of equipment in this shared space. They have preference and first use of the equipment, but they let everybody else use it when they're not needing it for their business operation. So with that, I'm going to stop and have more of a dialogue from you all. What do you see from the community's perspective is sort of, what are those pieces of equipment that you think would draw people there initially? Because we have to start somewhere. What are those first few pieces of equipment that would be really important? Laser engraving, no matter where we go, is the number one piece of equipment that's used most heavily. But there's certainly probably some specialty things here that might be of interest to the community. So what ideas do you guys have in terms of equipment that you think people might be able to use? Yes.
Three-dimensional CNC.
What I would like to ask, if you have a mic, if you're going to play it back on television.
Thank you. I think a three-dimensional CNC machine would be pretty interesting to use and useful.
Okay. So a CNC router. Okay, so a three-dimensional CNC router. Other ideas for equipment? Raju?
Well, in 3D printing, I know that everybody has how to make the trinkets, that small gadgets, but there is a new machine. You can lease that one for 50 grand. It is the state of the art. What the existing 3D printers do in 2 hours, it can do in 10 minutes. So also, the product which comes, it is not rapid prototyping, but it is a rapid manufacturing. So that means the product which comes, it is ready for use in the industry. But this one is limited to the plastics only. But I think, again, if we can engage the industry, as you are saying, if wherever the equipment is located, industry can use it. That is, maybe, because how we want to differentiate ourselves, because everybody is doing the same thing. So down the road, sustaining in the long term, that's what we need to look at, how we can sustain this type of entity if we want to have it.
So a very state-of-the-art rapid 3D printer that doesn't only make a prototype, but makes something that's actually the end product. The idea would be that people who are making a mold and going to a manufacturer are going to save significant dollars in using a piece of equipment versus going out and having it take a really long time and be really expensive. Thanks. Other ideas?
I've heard a little bit about, as far as a maker space, that could be a general need for what we have at like our local high schools, industrial arts, just the general tools, kind of some of the bigger tools, but that would be real helpful.
So some general hand tools, and saws and mills and things like that. One of the things that I don't think necessarily we think of when we think of some of this high-end manufacturing equipment, in Wichita and now in Independence too, they're getting into textiles. So a quilting machine, sewing machines, and having the space to do that out in the community. So if you think about a space that's catering to manufacturers, it's catering to entrepreneurs, it's catering to hobbyists and craft folks who might think that they have it as a hobby, but it could be a business. If you think about alterations and things like that, those are the pieces of equipment that we want people to be able to say, I don't just need to do this in my house, but I could make this a business. Did I see a hand back here? I think I did.
How close is it?
You're good.
All right. What I was thinking, I thought I was in the wrong room here for a while, but what I was thinking is someplace where people could, like a test kitchen, where somebody, you set it up so that somebody could come in. Their kitchen's not approved for selling items, on the market, but a place where they could go in, make their product, because the kitchen is approved by the health department, and that's where I was coming from, so.
Awesome. So the need for a certified kitchen, and it's not necessary that everything is in one space. And I think that I'm going to let Mary have this to talk about that next thing.
And we have what you're looking for. We're the Salina Innovation Foundation, and we are the caretakers now for the Salina Masonic Temple building. And we have a commercial kitchen that we've licensed for kitchen for hire. So, and that's what we're doing with our spaces, working with Mitch and the entrepreneurial landscape here. If you have an idea for a business, we've got spaces, temporary spaces and affordable spaces to help you get started, and one of those is a kitchen for hire. So if you're interested in trying out an idea for a catering business or something that you would like to make to take to sell wholesale, say for local markets, come and talk with us. Yes.
Where is it?
Do you know where the Masonic Temple building is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we're fully licensed and you can rent by the hour. Yeah, we are fully licensed and you can rent by the hour. So you can come and work with us. And we also have a couple of mentors, but we're looking for more that can help startups, people that have restaurant experience or chefs, executive chef experience. Yes, we've had a couple that. Right. So there was a couple that came to us, scratch cooking, and it was a young couple that wanted to start a restaurant here in Salina. They had very little money to do it, and so they had a place to start with us, and they were serving breakfast and lunch. And after doing it for several months, they realized it's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than they thought. But rather than going out and signing a lease and taking out a big loan, they got to try their idea in our space. And so they're stepping back and they're going to focus more on catering. But we've had several people come to us that are interested in starting a gluten-free business or maybe a smoothie business that they could deliver to the local cancer hospitals while people are doing their chemos, things like that. Someone is interested in selling items at a local farmer's market, and they're not able to manufacture that in their home. So those are the types of things that we're able to do with our space and working with the local entrepreneurs.
The other thing that K-State has to offer in that space is we have the ability with on our main campus to do pH testing and also nutritional testing and labeling. So for a price, you can send your samples to K-State. That way it'll be all official and approved through all of the regulatory bodies that deal with food. It's a little crazy when you get into food regulations. So having those labels that are properly done and accurate are really, really important from a liability perspective. Other ideas for space that people are sharing in the community, things that should be located there. Did my exercise this morning.
So Heather, what's working in Independence? Some of us have been there, but at some of the other Fab Labs, what are the foundational pieces that are kind of the go-to that everybody needs?
Yeah, so the high-tech laser engraver is by far what everybody is using first. The water jet cutters, so being able to cut steel and things like that. Everybody likes the cool signs on the wall. Are kind of some of the foundational things because people like to make.
You're saying a laser engraving.
Yeah.
So the engraving services only is what most people are.
They're using the laser engraver. Then they usually go to after they get something engraved, they're like, oh, that's cool. I want a sign for the wall. And then they're using the water jet cutter and things like that. Those are probably the biggest two. And then just the regular hand tools because almost everything that you make requires the hand tools to get the product to be manufactured.
Laser engraver to cut other materials?
You theoretically can, but that's not the best use of the laser. It's possible, but that's why they have the water jet cutter. It was a better option than using up your tip of your laser. Raju, did you have something?
I mean, to answer your question, the engraver, I don't think it will do the job of cutting, it has limitations for the depth of cut. I don't think it will be able to do that. There is one more thing. In most of these fab labs, they lack, there is a test equipment. Whenever you print 3D printed parts, most of the parts are not tested for strength. There is a $15,000 equipment. It will be a good thing to have. So when you print a part, if you want to test whether it has the strength and the functionality, that will be really helpful for most of the industries.
Right, so you don't only want the prototype, but you want to actually be able to test the prototype and make sure it's not going to break when you're in the middle of the test process, which could be dangerous. The other thing that's been really successful, I would say, at both Go Create and Independence is the variety of people who are using the space. So we're thinking of entrepreneurs, and that's what we certainly want it to be focused towards, but also the number of younger kids who are getting involved and get their families involved. Mom and dad think, I have no interest in being an entrepreneur. I have no interest in using this stuff. When the kids start using this stuff, the kids are drawing mom and dad into this space. They've had some success with, I would say, at-risk populations. There are some people who've never experienced success. And so when they suddenly have success and they're making something, it does something for the self-confidence of that person, and they start doing more and more. In Wichita, they have been really successful with their textiles side of operation. Also printing signs and very large graphic printers is something else. Car wraps, they can now do car wraps in Independence. Independence just got a $350,000 grant from the Economic Development Administration to expand. They just started 3 years ago. They've already outgrown their space and are expanding. So the idea that people want to share equipment that they can't have on their own, I think is sound. It's how do you make it feasible, make it something that's different than everyone else, and then how do we make sure that it's not just a hobbyist or doesn't just become one person's prototyping lab, but that it's open to the community.
Ask about or tell us about the director there in Independence, and that's going to be the key. The key position is somebody that is both hands-on, understands marketing. So tell us about Jim.
Yeah, so Jim Carell is the director in Independence, and Tim Haynes is his assistant. And Tim actually has no background in manufacturing at all and has an art degree. And just wants to make things and wants to learn things. They've done everything open source. They have not bought any of the expensive software, and they figure it out by trial and error. And so that idea that there is nothing that's failure, we're learning for every mistake we make, that there is no failure, that attitude's really important. And the idea that being dedicated to that, you don't have to have a lot of money to be an entrepreneur. Just start small, fail fast, adjust and pivot. That attitude that their directors have down there is really, really important. And the more that they've talked about it and just sort of spread the word about what they've done, they've gotten more and more press and attraction from doing that. And Jim teaches entrepreneurship down at Independence, Who Owns the Ice House, about starting from nothing. If you think about the economic difference between Independence, Kansas, and Salina, Kansas, it's pretty stark. So certainly there are more resources here. It's much more depressed down there. But they've been very successful in finding the resources to do what they need to do. So the prices between Wichita and Independence is astronomical. In Independence, they charge $125 a year for a membership, and in Wichita, they charge $125 a month. So that's pretty far difference. Independence has learned a few things. They used to not charge for the use of any certain machine, so now there's actually a time charge on the laser because people were kind of hogging the laser. And so now there's a time charge on there. But the cool thing about it is also, because this is all open source software, you could design all of your projects at home on your home computer and take them on your thumb drive to the makerspace and just plug it in and print it there. It's not as if you have to spend all of your time there using some very expensive software package. And so the idea that you can enter in and get access to this equipment at a pretty reasonable cost is pretty attractive as well. Other questions? Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Mitch.
Thank you. So the third piece is what we've talked about is really, we can call it a lot of different things, programs, activities, projects, but really it's going back to the survey again. It's going to be meeting the needs of the entrepreneur, the small business startup. Part of that is going to be met by our partners, SBDC. We're going to be seeing the representative from Fort Hays come into Fort Hays State, who runs the SBDC there, is still very interested in coming to Salina. We're going to be working with him on a location, whether it's in the chamber building, the EDC offices, or elsewhere. So we're still in that hunt to get that done. So that's something that we're working on. But again, going back to August, they've already got scheduled. I've got 2 sheets. You should have the, I don't know what this is, yellow or I don't know what color you would call this, but it looks like yellow to me. So on August 14th, the workshop, and this is what they call their Lunch and Learn series. It'll be a 90-minute session on business startups. Pretty basic, kind of talking about the business. And then 2 days later, same time, again, lunch here in this room, they're going to be talking about startup finance. You know, how to read a business sheet or, you know, your financials. What does it really mean when you're looking at those? And what kind of implications does it really have on your business? Are you going up, down, or whatever? So highly recommend those. And then yesterday, we've been talking with SCORE for quite a while about different programs that they could offer. So, you know, they do everything from social media, and we think of SCORE as Senior Corps of Retired Executives. You know, these are the old whitehead guys, kind of like myself, but they have a lot of partners that they bring in. So when we were discussing social media, yeah, they knew they've got a little bit of expertise there, but they have current folks who are cutting edge that they feel very comfortable doing the current, latest, greatest, whatever social media variation you want to talk about, they can talk about it. So take a look at that page. But again, this is going to be coming back. When we do the survey, we want to gather out, you know, is it the basics? Some people are going to be interested in the basics. Other people who've been in business for a while, they may need something more like social media. So again, they can do a broad range of programs. One thing that we did get settled yesterday, and I'm probably a little premature talking about it, but I think they can't shoot me over it. August 25th, SBA has a program called Boots to Business. This is geared toward current military folks, retired, spouses of military people, kids of military people. Probably if you've even thought about joining the military, you might qualify to get into it. I'm kidding there, but this is a national program. They're going to be, the SCORE chapter is already teaching it at Fort Riley. So August 25th, that's a Saturday. It's a one-day, full-day session talking about how to start a business. So again, this is geared toward veterans, military folks, past military people. So we're going to be promoting this along with SBA and the SCORE. So that's just a couple programs we've already got started. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you all think we need? What does the community, what are you hearing? And then we've got other things we're going to talk about too. So, Mary, when you have people come in, it's just kind of a general soup to nuts.
Yeah. When people come to us, they're looking for where to start. They've got the idea, and they know we've got the space, and it's just, you know, showing them that process of, you know, do you need marketing? Do you need a business plan? Do you need mentors? So all of that, and I think these workshops are going to be a big help.
Anybody else? The banker perspective, we appreciate that.
Sure. I do work at a bank full time, and what I see when people come into my office that are new entrepreneurs is definitely not sure where to start on the business plan, and they don't typically know how to put those numbers together in the beginning. Those are the two biggest holes I see.
I think that's very typical. Other partners that we have that can do some of that work is regional planning out of Beloit. They do an excellent job of packaging SBA loans, other loans. They also have, and this is down on my list as well, really a funding coordination among all the finance programs. People say, well, we can't get any money. We don't know how to get money. Well, there is money out there. It's just people don't know where to look. And that's something that with Project Open, which is a program sponsored by the Chamber, and I wish Eric was here because he could talk about it for all day if we wanted to. But that's kind of the basic level. People want to get into a business. They now can do up to $75,000 on loans. Once we exceed that amount, then the regional planning group in Beloit, they've got a couple different funds that can help businesses get started. So, and then they also work with SBA on packaging loans with them. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. So that's one of the things that we're going to start sometime here in the near future. We're going to start branding the chamber office, our offices, as a one-stop shop. I think that's been something that's been talked about for quite a while. Between our services, it's not necessarily we perform that service, but we know who to bring into the partnership with the entrepreneur themselves. So information, sharing that information, bringing parties together, that's something that is in our mission. Another thing that's been talked about, I've had a couple people express some interest, is angel network, potentially a local angel network for both sides, for investors to be able to invest in businesses, and then also for potential people who are looking for backing of a project. So got somebody nodding. I think she probably, have you had any experience with any? So working, some of you all were at the meeting that the Entrepreneurial Center of Johnson County came in a couple of weeks ago and did a program at the temple. It was a nice event. And they talked about they have a angel network that they also supervise in Johnson County, but they have a coordination with Manhattan, and they also have coordination over a separate fund in Topeka. So it's up and going. It makes a lot of sense. It kind of got a structure there. So we're going to be having some dialogues, some discussions with them about how we could establish an angel network here in Salina. And there are a lot of different networks. We've got a local business lady here in town who is involved in Kansas City on a women's only angel network. So that's something she has experience, and she's expressed her willingness to work with us on that. So that's something we're excited about. Youth programs, as you all know, or some of you know, that the Project Open has pieces of it, and this is a Network Kansas program, Project Open is, where they're in the school system and working on pitch competitions for those kids. And there's also, I think you all would agree that, we need to get to these kids at an earlier age, even middle school, maybe even in the elementary, to let them think about being their own business owner. We talk about it, but how do you actually show those kids an example of, yes, you can be your own boss rather than working for somebody else? I think that's something that a lot of people don't, at an early age, understand until maybe they get in college or out of college, or they don't even go to college. That's the other thing that we need to talk about. And Salina Tech provides a lot of excellent programs, hands-on skill sets of a needed sort. But people, want to do things on their own. And I think this is something we need to start doing at an earlier age. Other things we've seen, talked about when we were in Manhattan, they have a community pitch competition They have a I believe it's $25,000 top prize. It's a year-long process. Companies who are interested submit their projects, their companies in for consideration, and then they go through the process of being reviewed, and the ultimate company, the ultimate winner wins about $25,000. Second place, I think, is $5,000, or second place is $3,000, and third place is $2,000. So it's kind of an interesting thing, and we're seeing that done across the country. So I'm going to stop at this point running my mouth and let you all talk about things that you see we might need, we might be interested in doing, what needs are out there, and then we'll wrap this up. Mary, please.
I just wanted to talk about co-working, and that's something that we're working to establish at the Innovation Foundation down at the Temple. Co-working is a shared space where if you're a small business or looking to start a business, you can share space. It's a membership much like a maker space. So for a daily price or weekly or monthly, you can drop in, and there's shared services there also. So you can share the printer, the fax machine. You can spread out and work, or you can find a private spot to slip off and work. But what's nice is it's a community, so you start to share ideas with other people that are there. If a lawyer is there and a graphic designer, the lawyer may need graphic design services, the graphic designer may need a little legal advice. You start to pull and support each other, and so that's a great thing. There are a couple co-working spaces throughout Kansas. We're starting to develop that here. There's one in Wamego, there's a couple in Manhattan, there's one in Wichita, one or two, I think. One in Great Bend, Great Bend or Garden City, I think, Garden City, in Hayes. So, and we would be reciprocal with that. So if you have a membership and you're in Manhattan, K-State, and you're passing through Salina, you could drop in for the day and find a place to check your mail and to just have a quiet place to work. So I think that's great. Yeah. And so that's something that we're working hard to develop here. And that's a community. It takes time to develop that and to let people know that if you're working 2 and 3 jobs, that one of those jobs could be something that you really like to do, and develop something for yourself. And maybe it's not your sole job, but it's a way to make a better life for yourself here. So.
Anybody else? Steve? Okay, go for it.
One of the things that SMC has been doing, originally, of course, they are a television station that did just local television, and we continue to do that. But one of the things that has happened since we branched off into this sub-company of SMC is that we're doing a lot of support work with other businesses. If a good example would be is if you needed footage for something that you're producing yourself, we can provide the footage as a partnership program goes, and then you can take your footage and use it as you want when it comes to any project that you might be doing, whether it's commercialization or not. So we're expanding a lot of different areas. We're doing educational filming, so that if you want to train your staff or whatever, you can do a piece in there, and when we can use it as a part of your programming too. So there's a lot of availability for what we can do as a local station that's not available anywhere else in Kansas. It just doesn't exist. The beauty of that is that if you want to have something of that nature, you're going to have to go to a large business that does strictly production bases and things of that nature. Quite often that's cost prohibitive, especially for people that are new budgets, new startups would be a good example. So they can venue through us for us to support them by becoming a member with us to make those things happen. So it's moving very fast. We're connecting with Rolling Hills Zoo to do some very large projects with them. And then we've got a lot of other projects that we're working on that follow into that realm. So once again, that would be a venue of support, as well as, again, community support. So the individual as well as the community gets response from that.
Very good. Exciting.
I would love it if this town could develop a a list of tutors and people who are willing to supply resources. For instance, if you needed to learn a specific welding skill, and the best way for you to learn it is for someone to demonstrate it and stand over your shoulder and watch you. That's the best way for me to learn a new skill. If you're trying to work in ceramics and you don't have your own kiln, you don't want to buy one, is there someone who would be willing to fire pieces for you, with the possibility that yours will blow up in the kiln, which is the reason why a lot of commercial kilns won't let strangers bring their work in. So I think I would like to have that kind of resource available for the whole community.
One of the main problems with keeping my business going after I got it started, I was not aware, but I need business insurance. And just the general knowledge of starting a business. This little workshop that's coming up will be helpful. But I think, and when you talk about programming, just one dedicated to business insurance, startups, maintaining it, and potentially some kind of a list of who offers business insurance. I made at least a dozen applications, and still not completely insured, but I have insurance. And one of the things that you were asking about earlier was things that would be needed in a makerspace or fab lab, and it was a hurdle for me on insurance would be a certified spray booth and flammable storage.
We were in the Go Create lab there in Wichita, and they were having some issues with their spray. They had looked like a very nice spray booth, but they were having some ventilation issues, and I think that's a very common issue. So
Independence is getting one in their new expansion, and so one of the problems was that engineers created the building in Wichita without really any concern for what was going to be in the building or any ventilation needed for any of the equipment, and so they've run into a few air handling issues. And so wherever the location is selected, the air handling, the power, the ventilation is really critical, because even just the smoke from the laser was a big issue in Independence when it first opened, and luckily it's kind of a Morton building. They're able to cut a hole in the side and ventilate it easily, but where the equipment is located, to your point, is really, really important.
anybody else? Kurt, you got anything today? Okay.
I know, so skill development, the Salina Tech certainly can fill some of those needs, and we can too, but someone may not want to go to the extent of taking a class, and it may just be learning how to run a bead of oxyacetylene weld and make a repair to their lawnmower or something. So I think that's huge.
I know my one of my former locations in Missouri, their vocational school, they still use that term to some degree, offered one-day Saturday sessions that could, on really a wide variety of topics. So that's something that let us talk to folks at Salina Tech, and maybe I'm sure they could offer it. It's a matter of staffing and then marketing and getting people to come and help pay the bill. But that's a great idea. It's a great idea. What else? Any other? We're about to my self-imposed deadline of an hour, so don't want to keep you all from your normal jobs. Anything else? Well, if you're not, and hopefully you are, checking out our Facebook page, Startup Salina, this is the place where we're sending out information. If you don't have a membership there, I have cards here with my email address. Please respond. If you've got other people, we had several people that had originally committed today, and they weren't able to make it. But we want to get as many people involved. This is not. This is a very inclusive effort, not an exclusive effort by any means. We want to make this available to all parts of the community. Those of you all who didn't pick one up, we got a little poster that we're putting around businesses. So if you want to take one for yourself, if you got a business or know some places that might be a good spot for it, please. We're getting the message out. What other Facebook, obviously, as my 19-year-old would say, well, Facebook's for old people now. What other resources, what other tools do you all use? I'll ask that question and then we'll wrap up. We got
One of the things that I found is that the local radio stations are very generous. They'll give you, Clark Sanders will give you 15 minutes or so on a show just to talk about what you're doing.
Right.
Maybe approach the Salina Journal, see if they might donate a bit.
Eric Wiley has been very good at the newspaper to get information out, and the radio station. I've been on a couple times talking about this, so you're right. We just need to use every media method there is, and we're using one today. So appreciate the station coming in and taping our event today, and if you all got open time, we'd love to do anything in the future coming up. So. At this point, if anybody else doesn't have anything else to say, we'll wrap it up and look forward to seeing you all in the future. Thank you.